the plush of one of your Pokemon on the team, you're statistically more likely to perform well. And
Is
it's
that how
got in
that
the top
works?
8. I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Good to know. Good to know. I'll have to bring a Bidoof plush with me next time around.
So like we said, Alex is currently up 1-0 in the set over Zach right now. So Zach is going to need to win the next 2 games going into it. If you were playing in this scenario, how would you handle that? Would you just try to pretend like it is game 1 because it technically is the first game they're playing today, or do you have to try to go for one of your more elaborate plans to try to catch Alex off guard?
I mean, I'm making the assumption that these players don't have much information about each other's teams, though. You know, Zach was on stream the last round of the stream the other day, so it's possible that Alex has a little bit of information. I think if you're in Zach's shoes, though, you have to go out thinking not only is it game 1, but you have to assume that your player maybe went back, checked out the stream a little bit, and knows a little bit about how your team is going to operate. That all being said, you know, I think Solgaleo and Calyrex Shadow Rider, a lead we saw Zach rely on a lot in the on the previous day, is a very powerful lead here, and really forces Alex to maybe consider leading that Porygon 2, or consider, you know, whether or not he wants the Palkia or the Zacian around already at the beginning of this game. So I think if you can just find that offensive momentum from turn 1 immediately and just kind of keep that rolling, it doesn't necessarily matter that this is technically game 2 of your set. You know, you're still starting with your best foot forward, and you're bringing that momentum through.
Alex Arand on the top of your screen with the Palkia Porygon 2 lead, and Zach on the bottom of your screen with Solgaleo Grimmsnarl. So 2 offensive powerhouses in Solgaleo and Palkia next to their more supportive utility teammates.
Yeah, and Grimmsnarl is the perfect option to support Solgaleo in this position, since assuming it has access to Light Screen will mean that Solgaleo could go for the Dynamax, you know, have that extra bulk sitting around already, and then maybe do enough damage so that it doesn't matter if this Porygon 2 tries to go for a Trick Room. You know, Palkia is known to be a decent Pokemon when you twist the dimensions. It's hard to say how these speeds are going to pair up, as, I mean, assuming Solgaleo is going to Dynamax, we just saw Palkia Dynamax first.
That's true, so that could be a potential indication that the Palkia is a faster Pokemon, but we aren't going to get that because instead of Dynamaxing, Solgaleo will opt for the Protect on this turn. Light Screen from Grimmsnarl will reduce the damage from special attacks for the next 8 turns if it is holding that Light Clay item, which it most likely is. And then Max Quake out of Palkia into the protected Solgaleo, so that's a great turn from Zach because it only took 25% of the intended damage there because of Protect, and that will boost the policy.
Yeah, so even though Solgaleo doesn't have its partner Shadow Rider Calyrex next to it to activate that weakness policy, thanks to the help of that Light Screen, it is able to emerge from this turn fully boosted, and we are seeing the Trick Room revealed on Porygon 2, so a good indication here that Alex is probably running a slower and bulkier Palkia, maybe hoping to underspeed the Solgaleo in the Twisted Dimensions, and as a result just knock it out even if it does decide to go for Dynamax this turn.
So even though Palkia did not do as much damage as it wanted to, in under Trick Room, it still has the advantage now, especially against where it looks like nothing on the field would have a fairy type move or a dragon move to hit it super effectively. That's one of my favorite things with Palkia is when you Dynamax it, it is very likely because of its bulk and because of its typing that you will be able to use all 3 turns of those Dynamax.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that this Grimmsnarl has access to Spirit Break, which would also drop the special attack of that Palkia, but it's not going to knock it out in a couple of turns. If anything, it would just sort of extend the amount of time that Palkia is on the field, because it's still going to be getting those defensive and special defensive boosts from those max moves.
Solgaleo will Dynamax here on turn 2 of the game, so if we have to look down a couple turns, the Solgaleo would potentially have 1 more turn of Dynamax available when Palkia is over. Reflect from Grimmsnarl, now the physical attacks will have their damage hurt. Foul play on Solgaleo, not doing too much damage, even though it was super effective. And then the Max Steel Spike into Porygon 2 is a clean 1-hit knockout, a critical hit on top of the weakness policy boost too. Make sure that Porygon 2 never stood a chance there. Defense boost for both of Zach's Pokemon. And now finally, the Palkia is going to attack with the Max Quake, meaning that was the fastest Pokemon because Trick Room is on the field now. So Solgaleo is actually faster, and I don't know if Alex was expecting that.
I don't think he was. I mean, you don't necessarily set up Trick Room for your opponent unless you're thinking so many turns ahead, you know, after the Solgaleo has been removed from the field, that your Trick Room would help you get an advantage. I mean, if we're looking at the restricted Pokemon in this matchup, Calyrex Shadow Rider is typically faster than Zacian. So hypothetically speaking, you know, a turn from now, once that Solgaleo has been knocked out, and once possibly Alex is forced to reveal that he brought the Zacian as his last Pokemon, which isn't even confirmed at this point, yes, Zacian would be able to take advantage of that, but that's so many turns ahead. I think that Alex genuinely thought that the Palkia would be slower than the Solgaleo, and as a result, gave Solgaleo one more opportunity to go for an attack. I mean, it's possible that this Incineroar could now underspeed the Solgaleo and try and pick up a KO with like a Darkest Lariat or another Dark-type attack, hence the switch here from Zach, but it's tough to say. I really want to see what this last Pokemon is going to be and how it pairs up to all the Twisted Dimensions.
A straight-up switch into Tapu Fini instead of a potential max guard, or something deciding Tapu Fini on the switch-in is a much better option for Zach here. That will set up the Misty Terrain, which will hurt some of the Dragon-type damage potentially coming out of Palkia. There's the Spirit Break you were talking about. Super effective Fairy attack that will lower Palkia's special attack by 1 stage. And there's the Darkest Lariat. That's a great call. Because Tapu Fini resists that attack, it hardly did any damage at all. Max Quake on the 3rd and final turn of Dynamax for Palkia into Grimmsnarl. And again, not doing too much damage thanks to that Spirit Break and the Light Screen from a couple turns ago.
Yeah, so both these sides of the field have so much special defense boosts going around. You know, that Palkia has all the benefits from the Max Quakes, that Incineroar now has one. And then on Zach's side of the field, like you said, there's the Light Screen and now the Spirit Break special attack drop on that Palkia. So it's going to be a bit of a slow grind here. You know, Tapu Fini does have access to Moonblast. I believe we saw it use Dazzling Gleam the other day, so that's another option for some damage here. But, you know, Tapu Fini isn't typically used as an offensive presence on the field. It's more there to provide support with that Misty Terrain and, you know, do some nice chip damage, maybe burn some Pokemon with a Scald or two. So stuff like that. So I think that if Zach wants to take advantage of the remaining turns of Trick Room, as it is likely that Tapu Fini is slower than this Palkia, he's going to have to get his targeting right, and he might even have to hope for a couple of critical hits on top of that.
Incineroar, Flare Blitz will attack first under Trick Room, meaning it's the slowest Pokemon on the field. Grimmsnarl doesn't take much damage from it because that Reflect it set up a couple turns ago. And instead, Spirit Break into the Incineroar slot there. Special attack drop not mattering, but more importantly, that Spirit Break damage might be enough to bring Incineroar down very low, down to around 20% of its HP remaining there. So I don't know if Zach was thinking maybe the double target would take out the Incineroar, but he was not baited by Palkia's Protect.
No, I think that at least now Incineroar is knocked out by a second Scald from this Tapu Fini, and that means Grimmsnarl is free to go for another Spirit Break into the Palkia. And interestingly enough, Alex is opting to keep that Palkia on the field, despite the fact that these special attack drops are starting to add up.
And it's facing off against, you know, in front of 2 Fairy types right now that can hit it super effectively. The Incineroar will switch into Zacian here. I believe there is 1 turn of Trick Room remaining, so once the Trick Room expires, now Zacian will go back to being that incredibly fast Pokemon. Spirit Break into Palkia is not enough for a knockout, though, so now it is up to the Tapu Fini here. It went for a Scald on this turn into the Zacian slot. Is there a burn? There's a 30% chance to get the burn. It looks like did not get it. And now Palkia with an Earth Power into Tapu Fini. Not a lot of damage because of those 2 Spirit Breaks from Grimmsnarl. Twisted Dimensions have finally left the field, though.
Yeah, what a risky switch for Alex, on the other hand. If that Scald had gotten the burn off of the onto the Zacian, that would have been such a huge momentum loss. You know, Zacian really loves having the high special attack, or high attack that it has, and being able to just have the amount of damage that Zacian puts out consistently for the remainder of the game would have been huge for Zach. So a risky call by Alex, but it does pay off. Trick Room is over. Zacian is going to be the fastest thing on the field and can kind of pick which Pokemon it wants to try to knock out through the Reflect.
Behemoth Blade into Tapu Fini, a neutral attack, but because of Reflect, it is not enough to take it down. Brings it down to the red, but Palkia is not targeting Fini, so it will get an attack off this turn. Doesn't do a lot of damage to Grimmsnarl either, and Palkia knocking itself out from the Life Orb recoil. Tapu Fini with another Scald, again, 30% chance to burn Zacian here. Does not get it. Spirit Break from the Grimmsnarl onto the Zacian doesn't do a lot there. So a lot of turns from Grimmsnarl. Once you set up Light Screen, once you set up Reflect, really you can just kind of stick around and Spirit Break the rest of the field.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how this Grimmsnarl Grimmsnarl has just been allowed to sit around on the field and go for those spirit breaks. I think it did add up on that Palkia. We saw it do so little damage to the Tapu Fini and the Grimmsnarl. You know, yeah, Earth Power isn't, you know, a super effective attack against these Pokemon, but had it been able to find just a few more hit points of damage on that Tapu Fini, that would have been a knockout, and Alex would be in a position where he could afford to not target down the Tapu Fini with this Behemoth Blade and risk getting that Scald Burn. That would be so detrimental.
Fake out into the Grimmsnarl so it won't move, and Behemoth Blade into Fini, knocking it out on this turn. So no moves from Zach here on this matchup. Going to get flinched, or on this turn, going to get flinched here. So now Zach will either have to bring in Solgaleo or finally reveal his 4th Pokemon.
If that last Pokemon is the Calyrex Shadow Rider, now might be a good time to reveal it. This gives you the opportunity to use Bulldoze to maybe put some speed control down onto the field. You do have to worry about this Solgaleo matching up against the Incineroar and the Zacian. You know, right now Zacian is faster than Solgaleo, and Solgaleo is faster than the Incineroar. So hypothetically speaking, if Calyrex is able to get a Bulldoze down onto the field and the Solgaleo is able to outspeed both of these Pokemon, that can be one way to get around the fact that it only has like 2 HP left. Alternatively, you could just go for the Astro Barrage and get the double knockout, which is a fine way to wrap this up and really tie this series 1-1.
That really is one of the benefits for running the Calyrex Shadow Rider. It's one of the few Pokemon, you know, counting Regieleki and maybe 1 or 2 others, that is actually faster than Zacian throughout the entire format. So a Pokemon that is so centralizing to the format in Zacian, it's on, you know, probably half the teams that are out there in the field, bringing a counter that can actually hit it and outspeed it in under normal conditions is such a huge advantage for Zach.
It is, and the way that he saved that Calyrex Shadow Rider till the end of the game really meant that it was able to come out on the field. There was so much chip damage down onto both those Pokemon, it didn't really matter, you know, the fact that Astral Barrage would have missed the knockout otherwise. Like, you know, you think about Incineroar and Calyrex Shadow Rider. Normally, Incineroar is like one of the #1 counters to Calyrex Shadow Rider thanks to its fantastic typing and access to Darkest Lariat. But in this case, it just didn't matter. There was already that damage down on the field, and that Trick Room, again, really working more in Zach's favor than for Alex.
Right, so in this spot, now that if Alex didn't have the information that Solgaleo actually underspeeds Palkia in Trick Room, now we're aware of that situation. So yeah. Do you make the adjustment? Do you still feel like Trick Room is your best option because you have so many slow Pokemon? Because again, if you stay under normal conditions, well, then the Calyrex Shadow Rider is faster than your Zacian. So it's either like Palkia is hurt under Trick Room or Zacian is hurt under regular speed.
I mean, the interesting thing about Porygon 2 in this matchup is it is a normal type Pokemon, and Astral Barrage will not do any damage to it. You know, Porygon 2 is one of those Pokemon that, sure, it likes Trick Room. It's most commonly associated with Trick Room, but in a matchup like this, you don't have to lock into Trick Room if you're not comfortable with it. Foul Play is still going to do a ton of damage to the Solgaleo, especially after Weakness Policy activates, as it uses your opponent's attack power as the base power for that move. Alternatively, if Porygon 2 has access to some other attacks, you know, that could be an option as well for Alex. So I think the adjustment here isn't necessarily leave Porygon 2 behind. I think it's bring Porygon 2, don't set up Trick Room, and use Foul Play to power through the Solgaleo and the Calyrex.
And Alex needs to remember, you can't just let Grimmsnarl sit on the field forever, setting up the light screen, setting up Reflect. Look how long that game was, and you know the screens didn't even, they weren't even gone by the end of it because of Light Clay, making it last for 8 turns. So maybe having Zacian out with a little more offensive pressure right into the Grimmsnarl right away, so it can't just stay freely and Spirit Break away your Palkia and set up light screen and Reflect. Because if you just let Grimmsnarl kind of, you know, hurt you like that, you're really not going to be able to do enough damage. It took 2 Behemoth Blades to knock out the Tapu Fini because of Reflect.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about Grimmsnarl too in the Series 12 metagame, is that it doesn't really stick around on the field for that long, but if you're in a situation like this Game 1 where your opponent is just kind of letting it do that, you can certainly punish that with the Spirit Breaks, you know, with getting both screens up and putting those Pokemon within damage range for Astral Barrage.
And here with the exact same leads for Zach and Alex from the last game, going into game 3 of top 8. The winner will move on to top 4, and the loser is just going to have to watch along with the rest of us.
Yeah, so going into this game 2, I highly doubt we're going to see the Porygon 2 activate Trick Room. Honestly, I would be interested to see what would happen if the Palkia went for Max Quake into Solgaleo, activated the weakness policy, and then followed up immediately with a foul play on that Porygon 2. It's possible that would have been enough to secure the knockout, but Tapu Fini is a great adjustment here from Zach, as it will resist most of the attacks coming out from that Palkia.
Tapu Fini sets up the Misty Terrain, which again will lower the dragon attacks from any grounded dragon or Pokemon using a grounded attack. I wouldn't expect Palkia to use it on this turn, but it could potentially matter in a couple of turns when he's not facing down 2 fairy types in this moment. But Alex will Dynamax Palkia yet again, just like he did in the previous game here. Light Screen from Grimmsnarl will negate the damage from special attacks for the next 8 turns. Will have the damage, but Max Quake from Palkia into the Tapu Fini slot is not even enough to bring it down to half. So at this current point, it would look like it would take 3 Max Quakes just to knock out the Tapu Fini.
And that is assuming that we don't see any more Spirit Breaks come into play as well, though it does look like Alex was expecting that Solgaleo to stick around, given that he followed up that Max Quake immediately with a foul play. So a great switch from Zach. My question at this point now is, what are we going to see this Tapu Fini do? We saw it use Scald a lot of times in the previous matchup. I don't think you use Scald against a Water Dragon Pokemon. So I think we're going to get some more information. You know, we saw Dazzling Gleam the other day. That would be an interesting choice here. But, you know, a critical hit from this Max Quake could just take it out before we even get to see it move.
Well, will there be a crit? No, it is not. That would have been huge for Alex. That would have taken down Tapu Fini, but instead it just barely hangs on. Does have 2 special defense boosts, which does help against Tapu Fini here, as this Moonblast will target down the Palkia, doing some solid damage. And if this is followed up by a Spirit Break, which it is, that brings it down to around 30% of its HP. So now Palkia is -1 in special attack and is attacking into the Light Screen team. Eerie Impulse from Porygon 2 is going to lower the special attack of Tapu Fini as well. I kind of do wonder, though, if you plan on knocking out Tapu Fini anyway before it can attack, why do you lower its special attack by 2 stages?
It's an interesting choice for sure. It's possible that Alex was wondering if maybe there would be something switching in that would also be a special attacker, possibly that Calyrex Shadow Rider. But Tapu Fini hanging around with just enough HP to secure a knockout on Palkia if it's allowed to go for a Moonblast and another Spirit Break. Though it is possible that another Spirit Break would be enough to just knock out the Palkia, which is why we're seeing Alex switch it out.
Alex foregoing his 3rd turn of Dynamax on the +2 special defense Palkia, and instead switching Zacian into that slot, needing a lot more damage output, because as of right now the Reflect is not set up, and because Grimmsnarl did not go for it again, it will not be on this turn. Moonblast out of Zacian, or into Zacian, is ineffective, and then the Spirit Break targeting down the Zacian as well. That's a very smart switch from Alex, because he essentially took no damage and does not care about a special attack drop. Now the only thing with the foul play from Porygon 2 into Tapu Fini, 24 HP, and still not enough to take down the Fini. I think Alex was really banking on, obviously you can't see what your opponent's hit point count is at, really banking on foul play to knock out there.
It's very interesting to see, though, how both this Grimmsnarl and this Porygon 2 have been allowed to sit on the field and not take any damage. As a result, Grimmsnarl can go for the Reflect prior to this Zacian attacking. You have to wonder, though, do you prioritize the damage on the Tapu Fini, or do you just hope that it doesn't go for a Scald and get the burn before the Porygon 2 can knock it out?
You could also get a crit, which it looks like it was able to do here on this turn. Actually, it wasn't. That was just straight up through Reflect. That's a lot of damage coming from it. Of course, it does have the Intrepid Sword, but I really thought you needed a crit to take down the Grimmsnarl. It looks like it just was not bulky enough in that spot. Moonblast does hardly any damage to Porygon 2, and Porygon 2 is finally safe to activate the Trick Room, twisting of the dimensions for the next 4 turns.
A very interesting turn, and I think there's a couple of things we need to call attention to real quick. Tapu Fini still was using Moonblast, which is a little bit of an interesting play. It was given the opportunity to attack, but at this point in time, given that the special attack has been dropped so far, I would have thought that the most optimal play would have been to switch to Scald and just roll for the burn. Because if you get it, again, that's just a huge boon in your favor. But the fact that Tapu Fini didn't, I think, is an indication of what type of item it's holding. Possibly a choice Specs, I would have to assume, since it doesn't appear to be that fast. So the fact that it's stuck on the field, locked into Moonblast with the special attack drops, is really a good spot for Alex to start taking advantage of things. Unfortunately, though, for Alex, he did just set up Trick Room, so Solgaleo could come out onto the field. It hasn't taken any damage yet. It hasn't activated weakness policy. And Porygon 2 is actually going to move first. So it's possible we're going to see the Solgaleo go for the Dynamax, Porygon 2 activate the weakness policy off of a foul play, and then Solgaleo immediately return the knockout with Steel Spike.
And importantly, because of Full Metal Body, this Incineroar switch in for Intimidate does not affect Solgaleo whatsoever. Its attack stat, or any of its stats, cannot be dropped. So you're really just switching in Incineroar just to save Zacian from taking the attack. If Porygon wants to go for a foul play or something super effective in Solgaleo, all it does is just do more damage towards itself. But a smart, no, not even enough. That one only did 5 damage, that foul play into Tapu Fini, because of the switch in from the Intimidate on Incineroar. The Incineroar actually forces those teammates not to get the knockout. Max Steel Spike into Porygon 2, brings it down to under half its HP. That's a crazy turn.
But that is forcing Tapu Fini to take another turn of that Moonblast, which is just doing no damage whatsoever. You know, it's possible that Alex has identified his win condition to be Trick Room is active on the field, but Solgaleo is not present. So the Zacian can underspeed the Calyrex Shadow Rider and secure that knockout. If that is the win condition he's playing for, he would need the combined attacks from this Incineroar and the Porygon 2 to secure the knockout onto that Solgaleo, which is going to be a very tough spot to find. At least we'll see the last Pokemon at the end of this turn.
Tapu Fini finally knocked out thanks to Incineroar's Darkest Lariat, and Porygon 2 will recovering 50% of its HP. So now Solgaleo with a second Max Steel Spike into the Porygon, bringing it down to pretty much essentially where it was at the start of the turn. More importantly, though, facing down against an Incineroar and a Zacian in the back, this Solgaleo now has 2 defense boosts.
It does, but it also is still at full HP. There's only one more turn of Dynamax, and Alex is just not attacking it. It's a very, very smart strategy here. You are worried about the Solgaleo being able to move first, but if you just ignore it and focus on Solgaleo's partner, by the time you do hit that critical point of, okay, I need to attack Solgaleo, I only have moves that can activate the weakness policy, it could potentially be a 4-on-1 situation, which even if this Solgaleo gets the weakness policy boost and has like a spread move like Earthquake to deal damage to all these Pokemon at once, at that point in time, it's just, it's 4v1. That's very, very impossible for a single Pokemon to win.
Now, what also is difficult for Calyrex in this spot is we've seen Porygon click foul play many times, so it has an option to hit it 4 times super effectively in that slot. Calyrex, if it is holding Protect, might be a good turn to go for that here, just to see what Alex's intentions are if he wants to target that slot. No Protect, though, and the Darkest Lariat from Incineroar is going to target down Calyrex, bringing it down to its Focus Sash. So what does Porygon 2 do on this turn? It will be able to go for the foul play and knock it out, and that's exactly what happens. So Calyrex never gets an attack off in this pivotal Game 3. It's all up to Solgaleo now for Zach on this last turn of Dynamax, opting for Max Steel Spike yet again. Should be enough. It actually isn't. Porygon 2 just barely hangs on. Looks like that Steel Spike did a little bit less damage than the previous one did, and that's really hurtful for Solgaleo.
And now Dynamax is over. There is 1 turn of Trick Room remaining, and Zacian and Palkia are waiting in the back for Alex. You have to do a little bit of math here and be very careful as you do still activate weakness policy. Like, Solgaleo is at full health. It has a very amazing hold item, and it can certainly deal tons of damage with Sun Steel Strike or Earthquake or whatever other attacks it has. So you have to play this carefully. I like to see the recover on this Porygon too, as Foul Play is going to be so much more powerful once that weakness policy has been forced to activate. And Alex doing another amazing play. Parting Shot would have failed on the Solgaleo thanks to its Full Metal Body ability. Parting Shot only allows you to switch when those drops actually connect. Parting Shot his own Porygon 2 to get Zacian right on the field as Trick Room ends.
And it's perfect because Porygon doesn't care about the stat drops because Foul Play uses your opponent's attack stat to base the damage. So there's really no reason to activate weakness policy on this turn. You might as well just recover up and then safely get your Zacian on the field. So that was just such an awesome side parting shot that we saw from Alex.
Yeah, and Zacian doesn't have to worry about activating weakness policy as all of its attacks are either neutral or resisted. So it's very possible for Alex now to go for the Behemoth Blade, possibly a Sacred Sword, into this Solgaleo, bring it down to KO range for something like a Foul Play or just get a critical hit and win this game and move on into the top 4.
Zacian will be knocked out though, so it's not going to get another attack the next turn, but there probably won't be a next turn if Porygon went for Foul Play. Instead, playing it safe, understanding this is still a 3-to-1 count right now in Pokemon. You don't have to get crazy. You can just play it safe, recover up the HP, because the longer this goes on, it's going to be harder and harder for Solgaleo to knock out Porygon.
Yeah, I think that Porygon is just playing it super, super safe because it is possible that if Incineroar came back out onto the field, Palkia unable to secure the knockout with a Earth Power here, or, with a water type attack, if you're worried about activating the weakness policy, you're still going to need that Porygon 2 to stick around, and it's taking around 30 to 40% damage from those Earthquakes. With the weakness policy boost active, that means Earthquake would be a 2-hit knockout. So you just have to play this so slowly and so carefully and only go for the Earth Power when you're sure it will get that knockout.
Palkia claims the last knockout of the set, and Alex Arand is moving on to top 4 here in Salt Lake City.
That was a crazy intense set.